or for this what we have in mind for this memorial is we're not going to be busy for very long, hopefully about half an hour. I'm going to say a few things about David, and then Assad's going to say a few things about David. And then we've got a very short clip of David speaking about our work, and which we'll listen to. And then what I'll do is we'll create some breakaway rooms, and we'll go into the breakaway rooms, and then not for long, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then each person just share an anecdote or two about their experience of David, and then decide in that room as we wrap up which one of that you'd like to share in plenary. And then we share those experiences or memories of David in plenary, and that'll be our process done. That's kind of what we have in mind, or I have in mind for this session. David is one of the longest standing allies that I personally have in this organization. I think David and I first met in the late 90s. He kind of came to us through a man called Guy McLeod. And right at the outset, David proved to be incredibly committed to our work and to the content of what we're doing. And I know he initially followed Feiruz around with absolutely stuck to her, and then also spent quite a lot of time following me around, and has subsequently proved to be really one of the star deliverers of our content. So professionally, he was a standard setter. He was unlike anybody or very few people that I worked with in my career. But speaking about David, just in terms of professional acumen and competence, is really to do violence to the man, because David as a soul was really he was sort of head and shoulders above most other people. I mean, he really was an absolutely unique individual. I've personally been through much drama in the last 3 decades, and through most of the drama, David was always around, not necessarily explicitly so, but he was always around as a fundamental ally and support. So I've just the most extraordinary person, unbelievable kindness. Wherever he went, he radiated kindness. I'm going to just to wrap this up, to give an idea of the impact that I think he had on all of us as a team. Shahana Rasool would not be able to make it. She's busy traveling. So she asked me to read this a little short submission that she sent me, and which I'd like to do, sort of in summing up what I'd like to say about David. That will be followed by a short narration by Assad, and then a little listening to David himself, and then we'll go into our room. So what Shahana said is that David left an indelible mark on her life. He was a profoundly caring and thoughtful, always with a kind word, and he knew exactly the right thing to say in any moment. He touched hearts with his words that he crafted with consideration and attuneness. His words were music and rhythm which filled the heart with love. David's beautiful and enveloping smile always brightened my day. This is now Shahana talking. You left an engagement with David smiling and feeling fuzzy all over. I was so blessed to have been mentored on the Caring Growth training program by David. Every moment spent with him was an honor and a privilege. I'm deeply saddened by his loss, to all of us personally and to the world more broadly. He leaves a gap that will be hard to fill. I listen to his voice notes and I read the messages that he wrote with tears in my eyes and joy in my heart for his deep wisdom and care. His mark on the world and the people whose lives he touched is undeniably profound and deep. David, wherever you are, we love you and appreciate all that you brought to our lives. Thank you for being a beautiful soul of serenity and care. Wishing your family and friends, us included, much strength in this time of sorrow. Hamba Gashle, comrade and friend of mine. Until we meet again. Thank you. David, Assam.
Thank you for that, Daddy. Yeah, there have been some apologies. Yunus and Malishwani also are delivering and traveling, so they couldn't make it. I've put my thought a little bit to what I should say. Firstly, my mother did just ask me to pass her condolences. So she was saying she was very sad herself to hear about the news of David passing. And and what she said to me is that from her experience, David always had something affirming and appreciative to say in every situation with everyone. So it was not possible to get him to hear him say something negative about somebody. So you couldn't have David as a gossip buddy, that's for sure. And she was saying also he's a completely unique. So my mother passes her condolences to the family and to the colleagues. Um, just in terms of what I wanted to say about David, the first I've said this, I've reiterated this point multiple times, but I was taken aback by how deeply affected and sad I was at hearing about David. And I've been thinking about it. It's been quite hard to put my finger on like what's the cause of this feeling. Why is it so kind of profound? And there's a couple. At first, I think surely I must have cared deeply for David. That must be why I felt the way I felt. But one of the roots of that care is that, or one of the expressions of that care is that David would have been one of the people in the business that you celebrate successes with, and we're all collaborating, and the business is not easy. We are in a difficult game, and you have as many losses as you have wins in this kind of game. And you are fighting uphill in this kind of and but when with David not there, there's kind of almost an emptiness at the prospect of success, where and that and it showed to me that the successes in the world are made more meaningful by having people to celebrate them with, you know. And David was one of those people in the business that I really would have celebrated and sought to celebrate successes with. And he was a pillar of this business. We have been through traumas since 2016, transitions in the business. But since 2016, really, I think there have been three pillars in the business that have held the house up through a period of significant transition. And that it was, I think those three people is David himself, Pam, who I'm looking at right now, and my dad. While I have you two still around, Pam and Daddy, I'd like to express my gratitude to you for the role you guys both played in holding the house up as we transition into hopefully a more expansive future. Mm. I attended David's funeral on Monday, um, and it was a lovely ceremony. It was lovely meeting the family. As I mentioned on the group, David's sons are very. You can very clearly see that they're David's sons. They each have different faces, but I see David in all of them. You know, and as much not just their faces, but also mannerisms. When talking to them. Um, it was lovely hearing stories of David, from his family and from the community of faith around him. There was really a strong community. David was clearly a man of faith, a deep faith. I think that's one of the aspects in which I really resonated with him is his strong faith. and also the people he grew up with. It was really, I mean, listening to those stories, I was struck by the stature of the man that David was, as he was described in the stories of his past. And I really was struck sitting and listening to them that, firstly, he was clearly a very humble man, because I had never heard these stories before. So, he was a man who never kind of made himself or his own story the subject of conversation, right? It was always the other that was the subject of conversation. But I was also, Daddy, you always mention the point that human beings are always infinitely bigger than the cutout that's standing in front of you. And that's even more the case when you're dealing with someone with real stature. And so just hearing the stories of who he was beyond the work, where we really know him from, just really, I was struck by, behind this being who was so benevolent in our experience, was a real man of real stature. And our business was actually really blessed to have him as part of it. He could have gone somewhere else and taken that stature to some other endeavor, but he chose to bring it to our endeavor. Yeah, and David was clearly very loved by very many people. So I'm not unique in my feeling in my chest. Clearly, very many people shared that feeling. And I hope I'm not being too verbose. Let me try and keep it short. I just wanted to say also that I was also kind of struck by, though everybody was speaking very well in honor of David, I was struck by the fact that in my sense that the words that were being uttered can't really do justice to who he was. And and my thinking is this, that I'm sure the vast majority of people alive will have very many good things that can be appropriately said of them when they pass, right? But my question was, well, how do you communicate in your praise that this person that you are praising now who has just passed is not actually a normal person? You know, the praise that is due to him is actually beyond the norm. And that's my sincere feeling towards David. And it's when I was listening, all the praise, I agree with it, but somehow there was something about him that was just beyond what we can actually praise. He was better than the norm. You know, he was truly uniquely good and praiseworthy. And I'm sure everybody who knew him will kind of understand where I'm coming from with regards to the sentiment. That the words which are uttered in praise of him are words that can be said of a large number of people. But when they're saying the words that can be said of many, we're trying to express a goodness and a praiseworthiness of someone who was actually good and praiseworthy beyond the many, if that makes sense what I'm trying to say. I must say I was struck by that. But I had that trust in my heart that everybody who was listening and the people who were uttering the words of praise knew that, could understand that, yeah, they words that could be used for anybody, but we're trying to pick out something uniquely good in a person who was uniquely good. um and that praiseworthiness, I just want to share one example of how his praiseworthiness manifested in the business. And you always said to me, Daddy, and that David was uniquely the person who lived the thematic, right? If we were to pick one exemplar of the person who really lived the thematic, it really would be David. Even from amongst us, myself included, he was aspirational for me in terms of my attempt to live the thematic. And fundamentally, the message of the thematic is really two things. It's be here to give unconditionally as a way of life in all interactions, and deliberately cultivate an attitude of gratitude as the foundation of that giving. So it's really, fundamentally those two things. And one of the ways which David demonstrated this deep commitment to gratitude was, what he would do every single month when we paid his invoice as a business. David, every single month, almost without fail, there were some months he missed now and then, but he would send the business a thank you mail expressing gratitude for the receipt of payment. and expressing gratitude profoundly and deeply for the fact that we had paid him what he was owed, you know. And he never missed this. I've never experienced this from anybody, and I used to smile every time I saw it, and I thought, you know, David, you don't actually need to thank us, but thank you for thanking us, you know. I mean, this really was extraordinary. I mean, it's really extraordinary that's as a habit and a practice, right? Most of us don't thank for payment because we think this is just what's owed to us. So I don't thank for what's owed to me, you know? And that's so to actually to be conscious and deliberate about taking that step for every time you're paid. But I mean, if you think that David was a person who in every interaction manifested that same demeanor with whoever he interacted with. I mean, and I feel that for me expresses what's unique about him. I've never met anybody who was quite like that, you know? So he really was beyond the norm. And I'll miss him very much.
Mm.
So, I suppose I can only ask that God, you know, continue to ask that God be pleased with David and forgive him for any of his shortcomings. You know, we all have shortcomings, and that God increase the goodness in the world that flows from what David's hands have put forth, and to elevate David's place in the hereafter.
Mm. Mm. Thank you very much, Hassan.
My Skykema connection. I consider the Care and Growth leadership model as a model of distinction. A distinction acts like a meat cleaver. The cleaver separates bone and meat. It separates meat and sinew. And the distinction that I refer to in respect of the Care and Growth leadership model is a language distinction, a conceptual distinction. Let me explain. Care and growth, taking and giving, malevolent and benevolent, generosity and courage, awe and terror. These are examples of the rich distinctions that underlie and permeate the Care and Growth leadership model. It provides me with a conceptual toolage to continually interrogate my intent and my resultant behavior along that iterative continuum. And it is this richness that enables in the training delivery for my clients to do the same. I believe that the Care and Growth leadership model is timeless, and it will increasingly be relevant to people globally as we search for deeper meaning, both in respect of meaningful connections with self, with other, and also with the totality of the other, or the greater other. This, both in the workplace and in our private lives. Early in 2000, Skykema Human Excellence phrased its benevolent intent as enabling human beings to triumph during times of catastrophic change. It is this enduring aspiration that fuels and continues to fuel my passion for this work.
So, as I indicated, folks, I'd like to put us into breakout rooms now. I'll put us into 4. I'll put it for about 7 minutes. And maybe each person could just share an anecdote or 2 about the experience of David. And as we come out in the last minute or so in the room, just decide which you'd like to share in plenary. And then we'll finish off our meeting by sharing those experiences in plenary. So you're going into your breakout sessions now. I will join one of the groups.
Salam, Miriam. Just setting it up. We had to download it. Oh, the X camera comes up like it's James Bond here.
Assalamualaikum.
How are you guys?
Alhamdulillah, yourself.
Alhamdulillah.
Look at the little precious. I see just the top of the precious head.
Oh,
Mashallah.
oh, Salam alaikum.
Assalamualaikum.
Sorry, I'm going to get out and manage this thing because I didn't set the time right. I beg your pardon. Please carry on talking.
No problem. Can we see the baby again? Because he turned into your dad. Oh my gosh.
So precious, man. Mashallah.
Mashallah, Mariam. It's beautiful. Oh.
See the skater, man.
Okay, Mariam mixes them nice.
Who's it with the April family? Is it the whole family day?
Where? Where's the whole April family?
No, there's someone, yeah, the Zoom name is April Family. I don't know who's there. Is it
Oh.
you, Janice, or is it John? Who is that? They're on mute and we can't see the camera.
Well, that's Mariam, and I'm Sadika, and this is
Hi.
Faik.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
Everybody.
How are
Hi.
you?
We're not familiar with Zoom, and so we're learning as we go.
Oh, good.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
Hey, so
Hello.
Matthew's there.
It's myself, John, and my brother Andrew.
And Matthew.
How's it, guys?
Hi.
Hi, John and Andrew.
Don't they sound? They really. You sound like David. Yes.
John, when I spoke to you the other day, I got such a fright because I didn't know what was happening.
Oh,
Because you sound so much like your dad.
Thank you. Yeah, we're taking it day by day, and
Yeah.
actually like minute by minute, more like so. Yeah, thank you for the kind words
And the pictures.
and the pictures. Yeah, we were actually we're actually sitting in the lounge here, and when we saw the pictures, we actually all moved closer to the screen just to see, Dad. So
Marley must send them, eh? Send all the pictures.
yeah,
Yeah.
Thank you.
thank you.
I was telling Mariam the other day that it's still a bit surreal for us to believe that, he's moved on to the next level, that he's leveled up, because he's the goodness and his essence is so much a part of like the softness in us that it's like he's still here, like we can still feel him, your dad was I think that when we went to personal excellence together, he was my personal excellence partner. So I think I knew a bit more about him than some of the other people in Skatema. And I think that's also what made our bond so strong. And the only thing I can say about him is that he was never, even when he got upset, there was never a meanness to him. He'd always he'd sigh, and then he'd come back with mercy and compassion, however his response would be. And that we need to be understanding and those kinds of things. So for me, most of the goodness that I think of when I think of people involves your dad, because that's just who he was, always there for others without fail, without expecting anything. And I feel very blessed and honored to have known him. I'm so sorry I'm crying. I don't mean to make this difficult for you.
Like us all. He said.
We understand, Sadika. Yeah.
It's a lot, it's not.
And you Fai?
Mouse, sorry guys. I didn't catch all of what Asad had said or what was before that because we had some difficulty joining. We've got no power at the moment. But what I did hear from what Asad said, I deeply concur with. And maybe just want to add to that one other perspective, which was, I mean, is his ability or is his tendency to believe in a person more than they even believed in themselves. You know, for me, that was something exceptional. and that meant a lot to me, you know. Yeah, I aspired not only to his example now that he's left us with, that Asad was alluding to, but also that belief that he had in us, you know. And yeah, we loved him and we know we were loved by him. And we recognized our blessing in him. Yeah, and I mean, that's when all is said and done, what matters most, I guess.
Yeah.
We are so sorry we took up all the time.
No, I feel I had spoken already, so it's good. Mariam,
So-
can you just say something? So I just
Just to
curious to hear.
Faik's point, what he shared, you know, his ability to believe in us more than we did. I remember, I think David had asked me to prepare somewhat of a PowerPoint, you know, for a particular procedure, like in the surveys that we run. And at that point in time, I wasn't very familiar with PowerPoint. So I said that to him. I said, I apologize, David, in advance. It's very bland because I'm really not good at. And David stopped me right then and there. He said, no, you don't say that. You say you are still learning, Mariam. You know, and it was that he had absolute faith and belief that I would get to the point.
Hey, Hasnain.
Assalamu alaikum.
Muted,
Walaikum
Daddy.
salam.
Daddy, you're muted.
Thank you. So folks, from room number 1, that's Hasnain, Anna and Mohammed, who's going to talk?
You're muted, man. Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty. So I shared a story. It was in the earlier days of Impala when David and Pam were working on a guidebook for Impala. And sort of at the 11th hour in the middle of the night, having to make a whole litany of last minute changes on this guidebook. And it was quite stressful, and we were all immensely tired. And most of the work was between myself and Pam, but I still remember David being there on the call, checking in constantly throughout, sort of up until the wee hours of the morning. And even though he wasn't really adding, because he wasn't really there to add much in terms of the grammar corrections and restructuring sentences and so on and so forth, he was just there to offer support. And it was, he could have said, you know what, Mo, Pam, you've got this. But he was there until the wee hours of the morning, just offering support.
Fantastic.
Thank you, David. Room number 2, Asad, Faik, Mariam, and the April family. Anybody going to speak?
We didn't even let the April family speak. Sorry, April family. but between Sadiq and I mean, I had already spoken before we went in, so I feel like I didn't really. So I don't know, Mariam.
I think what
Sadika,
Sadika, yeah, Sadika and Faik both pointed out I mean, obviously Sadika was shared that she was she got the pleasure of doing the personal excellence with David, so he was her personal excellence buddy, and also Faik's point is absolutely valid that he believed more in us than I think we sometimes believed in ourselves, and that was uniquely David. In every interaction, you know, that he managed to, that he just had a way to make you feel better about something that you yourself are not feeling good about. Yeah, so that was us.
Okay. Room number 3, Pam, Søren, Thandi, and Tracy.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Thanks,
Thandi.
Firstly, 7 minutes was no way enough for us to talk. Yeah.
But 7 hours would also not have been enough, Thandi.
I know. I think what the overarching sense in our conversation was just how big David was in terms of presence and in terms of the impact that he left. Whether you knew him for a long time or for a short period, he just had an impact that you will not forget. So I shared about how the word that comes to mind when I think of David is meekness. And that he actually taught me how strong meekness is, and that it's actually not a weakness as conventional belief would like us to think it is. And I'd always wondered, so in the Bible, it talks about blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And I'd always thought this is an oxymoron, like if you meet, the earth is going to trample all over you. But actually, it's a strength. And how I identified it's the ability to submit yourself and not lose yourself, to actually allow yourself and submit yourself to the situation that you find yourself in, not because you're overtaken by events, but because you're deciding to. And David did that. David would defer to people. It didn't matter whether they were younger than him or whether they were newer than him. He would defer, but not in a way that made you think he's a weak man. So meekness is a word that really I came to associate with him and to admire about him. And the struggle is to think about him in past tense. I think it's going to take a while to think about a David who was, because, yeah, it doesn't make sense. A world that has a David who was doesn't make sense. A David who's in Cape Town makes sense, or a David who's in Rustenburg makes sense. A David who's not anyway does not make sense. And I think that's a struggle. It's going to take us a while to wrap our heads and our hearts around. So some of us, like me, are still in denial about the fact that this is where we are, and feel incredibly blessed to have actually known him. Yeah.
Thank you, Thandi. Room number 4, Barbara, Beth, Fagesal, and Tuso.
Beth, are you there? Beth's going to give the feedback.
Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues, and particularly good afternoon to the April family. In our small group, everybody had extraordinary things to say. And Asad, you actually said that these extraordinary things almost are indicative of something bigger. So David being recognized as a wonderful colleague and human being, David being all things to almost everybody, David being an extraordinary developer of people and a coach. And certainly from my side, I've had the privilege of knowing David for more than 20 years and working with him. I am inspired by his leadership. always trying to encourage people through either a challenge or support in the most gracious, affirming, and humorous way to be a better person. And I think that is the legacy that David leaves for me, is trying to be better. And I'm so grateful that he crossed my path. Thank you.
Thank you very much, folks. As Tandy indicated, 7 minutes to talk about David is just violence to the truth. But then I think 7 hours to talk about David would be violence to the truth. I'm very grateful that you could have spent this time in commemoration of this absolutely extraordinary man's life. We all pray, consistent with Assad, that his station in the hereafter is an elevated one, and that our lives continue to be enriched by his legacy. Thank you very much, and good day.
I'd just like to say, if the April family, that from my perspective, I have a huge debt of gratitude to David, and that debt of gratitude, I think, in my heart extends to you as a family as well. And so, God willing, it'll be an honor to remain connected in some way to you, particularly the 3 sons. Yeah, I just want to extend that and say that.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.